Marko, thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. The podcast we're doing is really what we call business of software. We talk about technology, we talk about teams, we talk about what it takes to put out software, to put out products in different shapes, forms. It's not technical. We don't get into technical details. There's plenty of that out there. We just talk about what it takes to get it done. And obviously, we talk about trends and what's happening and what people are using and what we think is going to happen to technology in the next it used to say in the next year, now it's saying the next week with everything going on. But it's an interesting conversation that we can have. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us what you do, who you are.
Absolutely, yeah. So my name is Marko Vasiljevic. I'm currently a CTO at a company called Ghost, which is a B2B inventory marketplace. And I've been there for almost 2 years now. My background is I've been involved in startups for most of my career, everything from starting my own companies, some, turn into complete failures, some kind of in the middle, managed to sell a company as well. I've been a part of a number of different startups in kind of different stages. I've been in the kind of last few startups I've been involved in, kind of really come in at a stage where the startup is starting to scale and grow really rapidly. So helping around with that kind of phase of the company and kind of getting from a few people to 1,000 people kind of range. But yeah, so I've been kind of like spending a lot of time in marketplaces, both on the consumer side and as well as B2B side. So that's kind of been like the last probably 10 years plus of my time.
Yeah, so you've seen it all. I've been in technology for myself for 34, 33 years. And same thing, right? I've had my own startups. Some succeeded, some failed, or I like to say successfully failed. It's always fun. Done some larger enterprise as well. But now I run a company. We do team augmentation, outstaffing. So it's not outsourcing, or we say we've solved the problem of outsourcing. We really help companies hire really talented engineers from Latin America and Eastern Europe, but we don't manage them. So we don't get involved in projects. Companies do it directly. We just provide people and take care of all the requirements, everything that it takes with, to run people. But that's not the point of the conversation. So first I want to talk a bit about changing world of teams and changing worlds of how we interact. You and I have been around for a while. We all remember everybody sitting in the same room, or at least in the same office, on the same floor, constant communication. We've then moved to wild west of COVID, where everybody's remote, nobody knows what they're doing. And now we're in definitely post-COVID, but some of that remained. So tell me what you see, what works for you, what doesn't, what's the success to get teams, people, not so much teams, but people interacting, communicating, and be one team, as funny as that sounds.
Yeah, I think it's as you said, it's been quite a kind of a journey and a lot of changes along the way. And I think that we're kind of I think that people are slowly starting to settle into a bit of a pattern. I think there is a bit of a push, especially in like the larger enterprise side, to like bring everybody back in office firsthand from everybody I know who is in those situations. He's a fan of that because, people getting pushed to come to an office so that they can actually like get on a call to talk to people who work at other offices makes very little sense. So there's a lot of like kind of nonsensical stuff happening on the kind of larger kind of end of the spectrum. I think that to me, it's always kind of like, what are you trying to achieve and what is the right tool for the job, right? So I think when it comes to certain types of companies, and my current company is sort of included in there, I think that it's certain groups of people who are interacting in a very kind of ad hoc way. It makes sense for them to be close to each other. So more like on the leadership side of things, and potentially certain teams that are kind of like very, work on like physical side of the equation, from like ops and potentially sales and so on. It might make more sense for them to be physically close. And that doesn't mean every single day. I think there's a good sort of balance of like how often you want to be sort of in person and kind of having that kind of a bit more of a unplanned sort of interaction versus not. I think for specifically like technical teams, like engineering teams, data teams, design teams, product teams, again, it varies, but I think that you can get a lot done by kind of getting the best of both worlds, which is really allowing people the flexibility to avoid wasting time and travel and sort of inconveniences, but at the same time figure out ways to bring people together
Definitely.
in productive
Definitely.
ways. I think there's kind of, and every team is different and every level within a team is different, but I think there's kind of certain patterns that I'm seeing that are starting to work well, which is kind of like on the kind of general team level, like you want to be bringing people together, at least a few times a year,
Oh,
and
for sure.
give
Absolutely.
them give them a way to interact and spend time together and work together, and just to kind of, it's like professional but also personal relationships and trust is really important. For some people who might be working closely with like specific customers, both internal and external, might make more sense for them to actually be with those customers if they're available. So it's a bit of a mix, right? And I think
Mhm.
every company also is different. I don't think there is a formula that works for every single company in the world, right?
I agree. So
So I
funny,
think there's
my company, we've been remote, full remote, never had an office
Mhm.
since 2014. So
Right.
that's when we started. This became a full time thing, right? Really became a company. 2014, never had an office a day in our life. We had offices for engineers before COVID. Don't have them anymore. We don't need them. But
Mhm.
as an core team across borders for I joke there's no two, well, now we have it, but it used to be no two people were in the same country, much less in the same city. And it's been successful. And so what we've done is, a lot of we overly communicate, right? We have a lot of Zoom calls. And, so our thing is video must be on. We chat, right? We have our chats where we chit chat and we encourage to make it a friendly chat, right? Not make it only come here to ask a question, get an answer, and walk away, but make it a friendly conversation, same as you would if you were sitting in the office, somebody made a joke, somebody said something, it turns into 10-minute conversation and everybody goes back to work, and that's perfectly fine. So I wonder if there's some secrets that you guys do with the same, or to get to the same point where, again, obviously, we do get together. I travel a lot, people travel a lot, so we get together a couple of times a year, but most of the time it's all online.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's again, it's sort of like it really depends on like the types of people that you interact with and you work with. And some people like to have, a lot of informal conversations. Other people are a bit more focused on the work.
Mhm.
I think it's like creating opportunities for those things is really important, but not forcing it, right? Like there's got to be some level of spontaneity to it. And
Absolutely.
I think, we kind of like, I think in general, sort of like if the team culture is constant, open, transparent communication, being very kind of helpful and respectful of each other, but also, bringing things up when there are problems and kind of directly attacking those problems, I think that goes a long way. And that kind of spurs on these conversations that happen. And like what I've noticed is like, this is like team quirks, but what I've noticed in like our, we use Google Hangouts for meetings, but like in the calls, there's always like a little side chat going,
Yeah.
and it's like it's always, people are like very interactive and they send these emojis, and like in the call, and they ask questions. There's like a lot of kind of side jokes happening. So like I think those
Same
are
thing.
all the things that kind of make those things. It's not just like a dry, join a meeting
Exactly.
and sort of like sit there and wait till it happens. Like it just makes it a little bit more fun, and I think that goes a long way of just kind of allowing and encouraging that, just that type
Yeah.
of interaction.
I absolutely agree. So, and I'm glad to hear that others are doing sort of similar things. Are you guys all US based, or you have international? Like how's your team split?
Yeah, vast majority. So we have an office in LA, we have an office in New York. The LA office is mostly sales and operations. And then we have some people from EPD on there too. I'm in LA, so I go to the office a couple times a week. But then like basically the rest of our engineering data team, half of our design team are all remote. Currently, pretty much everyone's in the US. We do have one person who's in Central America, but kind of the philosophy has been around kind of building the base team in the US and then kind of moving from there and kind of bringing in more people kind of near shore, specifically in like Central South America. So we're still kind of like in the, foundational sort of building phase, but we have, explored and talked to people and sort of like, planned out kind of like next steps in that direction too. So there's, yeah, I think there's again, it's not like one size fits all. I think it's just
Hmm.
for the team kind of size and makeup. There comes a time where you can be like, hey, we can probably throw in, 10, 20, 30% of the team in here, that are not necessarily US based, and expect the same level of performance because now their foundations are solid and we
Right.
have, we can bring them into like an organized environment.
And I'm glad you mentioned a few times there's no one size fits all. We started this service. It was all Eastern Europe, right? Originally, the first country we were hiring from so I'm based in Los Angeles. I live in LA. We're neighbors. But so we started hiring from Ukraine and then very quickly expanded to other regions or to other countries in Eastern Europe. And then several years later, we expanded to Latin America. I call it Latin America. Really, it's everything Mexico all the way down to Chile, Argentina, Brazil. So we cover the entire Central South America, Mexico, North America, obviously. And a lot of people ask me, so when they come, they go, so what's better? You should have an opinion. What's better? Is it better to do in Europe, and is it better to do, or is it better to do in Latin America? And they're always surprised when I say there is no better. It depends on what your team is. It depends on what you need. And I usually give them use cases where I say, well, in this use case, that may be more beneficial. In this case, this would be more beneficial. In this case, you may want to do this. I don't know what the use case is, but there is no one solution that fits all for sure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's in general, if the team is sort of working, relatively synchronously, and it kind of, especially if there's like regular meetings and
Mhm.
interactions, pairing and stuff like that, that's why we find that sort of, Central South America works really well just because of the time zone, and Europe, Asia in general doesn't really work that well. So even though we actually have some people in Europe randomly who were in here and then they sort of moved, but then they stayed on the team and we're making it work and actually works decently well. But I think for us, being primarily sort of US based, Central and South America are kind of like the right fit for the
Yeah,
stage
what
we're
what I find that if you have an existing team that works and you're getting people to complement that team, right? So you have a team of 5 people and you want to hire 5, 10, whatever the number is, and you want to hire 1, 2, 3, 4 people to integrate, you definitely want to go for Latin America because of the time zone, because there's more, it's easier. Now, Europe, Asia is hard. Asia, and there's a reason we don't touch Asia, but Asia is hard. Europe, you can still, there's plenty of overlap. And especially when you have team in New York, it makes it so much easier. So only 6, 7 hours, depending on where you are in Europe. But if you are building a self-sufficient team, so let's say, we're going to build a brand new team, we're going to have its own team lead, and it's going to function more in isolation and only communicate with us occasionally, then I'd say Europe may be a better place to consider, just because of different engineering approaches, different engineering levels and talents. But from a communication point of view, yeah, absolutely, Latin America, and that's how we got into it. Believe it or not, I was actually fighting it for a long time. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to stay in Europe until I realized it doesn't matter what I want when my customers want something else. So cool. I want to touch a little bit on latest and greatest, right? Technology, sort of where things are going. Obviously, AI is taking a main seat right now. Everybody's talking about AI. You and I in LA, we see the self-driving cars. I've actually tested, when I go to San Francisco, I exclusively take Waymo just for fun, right? I just want to play with it. I don't, I drive in LA, so I don't take Uber. I don't take cars in LA. But when I go to San Francisco, that's a good opportunity, and it fascinates me. Right, it absolutely does. I actually can't wait to own a car that I do not have to drive. As much as I love driving, I just want to get in the car, relax, and do my own thing, and that thing will get me where I'm going. But cars aside, we see tremendous progress in AI over the past, I would say, 6 months, 3 to 6 months, right? It's been around longer, but sort of the way I say it, 9 months ago, it was a hype. Now it's part of life, right? We use it all the time. Where do you see this going? How do you see this affecting teams, engineering teams? How do you see that affecting hiring and everything?
Yeah, I think so. We're we've been leaning into AI tools kind of from very early on, and are really starting to see some like real significant impact now. And I think it's kind of like there's a before and after, and I think that there's no going back. I think anybody who starts using these tools, especially like on the software development side of things, you just become more productive, and you can just work faster and do better things. And I'm seeing every day on our team just people doing crazy stuff that's just, you would have taken days, they can punch stuff out in a matter of hours, right? So I think like when you kind of look at I think I look at it in sort of two phases. It's sort of like what's the medium term, kind of short to medium term, and then what's the long term effect of this. I think short to medium term, what we're seeing is that really good engineers just become multiplied by X, and it could just do a lot more with less time, and also be able to do things that would in the past, if you need to onboard into some new tool or new system or something, it would just take time and effort, and to build that kind of skill. It's just a lot faster to do that nowadays. I can see over in the kind of medium term at like different levels, very different things. So like in the kind of very early stages when someone's going on like building something quick and dirty like that, you literally just need one person who kind of knows what they're doing, and you can get a lot done. And it's pretty amazing to see, right? Whereas before you would have to like go and hire a backend developer, front end developer, and maybe a designer to get something, and you can sort of almost punch that out by yourself, and that's incredible. And that's all the stuff you kind of see because that's the flashiest, most interesting kind of stuff. So like that's I think one. When it comes to teams that are actually like working on some relatively complicated, convoluted, or more kind of real business type use cases, I think there's a very different level of that tool usage, and it's adding a lot of value today, and it's going to add even more value tomorrow. I think what's happening there is that you're actually, again, you can do more with less. More senior people seem to have a bigger impact in the short term. What I think is going to happen there, it's actually going to affect hiring in the sense that I think, and I've already heard this from multiple people, a lot of companies are either slowing down their hiring or kind of stopping it temporarily to see what the effect is of
Mhm.
some of these tools. And I think that it's a smart thing to do. I think that there are opportunities to just scale together with the company without hiring for a period of time. But then again, like, if you companies growing beyond a certain point, it just means that the new people that you bring in just need to be, kind of AI first, right? So
Absolutely.
you want to bring an engineer, that engineer has to be an AI first engineer who can like do probably, amount more work than they used to in the past. So you just need fewer of those people, right? So I think in the medium term, the effect is going to be probably in the mid range, sort of like high growth companies, probably like slower hiring.
Mhm.
And then I think on the top end of the spectrum, I think you're kind of seeing two things, like people who are like early adopters, they're just going and like literally letting people go and probably overdoing it, maybe overplaying it a little bit
Yes.
just to kind of save money. They'll probably settle into some more of a stable environment where they're going to be like, okay, yes, we can reduce people in certain areas, and then we can just use the people that we have in a better way. So I think like overall, like I think in the short term, the impact is going to be like most likely for these kind of established businesses, like less hiring. Now, what does that mean for like smaller businesses or like kind of like early stage startups? It just means a lot more people can do with very a lot less knowledge and experience. So there's going to be some more activity in that space, but I think overall it's probably going to have a depressing effect on the hiring in general.
I can
But I
tell
think it's
you,
also going to elevate the profile of the person that you're looking for to hire.
yeah. So I can tell you from both my professional experience, right? I deal with hiring day in, day out for different companies in different regions and everything. And also talking to my peers, friends. I've spent so many years in technology. I absolutely agree. Many companies went a bit overboard with not hiring or even letting people go. Then it bounced back. And now I'm seeing a more balanced, if you will, approach. What I did see, and it sort of made me think. So I was talking to somebody, it's a mid-sized company. They always did summer internships for college students.
Uh-huh,
This year they
uh-huh.
canceled it. And they canceled it because they said, listen, we always got these people to take care of stuff that nobody wanted to do.
Right.
And we always knew that it takes a toll on us because we have to train them, manage them, right? We have to explain them. It's not easy, right? There's a price. It's not free. There's a
Hmm.
price to pay,
Hmm.
but we always got a bit more out of it than we put in. And that was a way for us to find future hires when they graduate. So that
Yeah.
was their approach. They canceled this year because they said everything that they do and more can be done by AI because it's all low level stuff, right? It's not
Mhm.
advanced. And they didn't do it, right? So they said that's good. And then the conversation went on to where I said, okay, so what are you going to do with your hiring in 5 or 10 years? Your senior engineers are there, and that's fine. But how do you let junior engineers become senior? If you're not going to hire them and relying on AI, and by the time senior people are retiring or moving on, moving to management, well, whatever it is that they're doing, who's going to replace them? And they didn't have an answer.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's because no one does have an answer. I think like, as I was saying, like I think different time horizons, it's sort of like different answers. I think kind of 3 to 5 years out, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. And I think that, depending on how fast things move, you may actually like cease to need specifically software engineers, right? You might be looking for product engineers or product people who are like technical product people, because at that stage you might actually the execution of like writing code or even architecting or even like setting up infrastructure, even like all those things might be sufficiently good or sufficiently well done by AI, where you actually can most companies will be able to get away without having like deep technical expertise that's like just purely software focused, right? Like that's it. Who knows? Like it really
No,
depends on
I agree. I agree.
which way it can go. But so I think like for those companies, like it's really hard to worry about like hiring 5, 10 years from now. It's like I think that's an unknown problem, and I think it's like the smart thing is to just kind of focus on like what you can do today and sort of like the next step, because it's too much. There's too much uncertainty. But I think one thing is definitely for sure, and that's like AI is coming and is going to disrupt this industry in a major way. It already is,
Yeah.
and I think it's only going to accelerate if you kind of like are in tune with it and know what's going on and are able to understand kind of like what the hopefully next couple of steps are going to look like, then you can get ready and prepare for it. Yeah, definitely. I think like being a junior or mid-level engineer today is not a great place to be. It's unfortunately, I think it's like unless you really, really, really lean into these tools and become incredibly good at using them and leveraging them, there are going to be fewer and fewer opportunities for people at the bottom kind of end of experience scale to like really build that experience up. Um, and
My
that's,
son is a junior in high school.
mm,
And so this summer, or come September, is the time for him to apply to colleges. And a lot of conversations we're having as to both what schools to go to and more specifically what major to pick. And he's not an engineer. That's not what he wants to do at all. Like, that's not that there's no risk in that, but it's let's evaluate if this job, whatever job we're talking about, will even exist by the time you graduate, which is, 5 years from now or so
yeah.
because of AI. And it's very difficult to predict, and it's very difficult to plan your future for kids today because they don't know, and we don't know, right? Nobody knows. There's no answer to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like I don't know. To me, it's sort of like the trend that I'm seeing is that execution is getting commoditized and trending towards zero cost. So like anything that is repeatable, that's like that you can create a system around is gone. And if you're applying rules, if you're doing
Mhm,
like that's all gone
mhm.
or will be gone very soon.
Yep.
But what is not is it's the more kind of like number one creative side of things, but number two is just kind of like more of a visionary side of things. It's like if you know what you want and you can build the skills of understanding how to get there, executing the steps will become cheaper and easier over time.
For
So
sure.
like you just I think those are the kinds of skills that like just tuning into like the real needs and tuning into problems, understanding problems
Yeah,
and being able to do that is going to be even more valuable in the future. So I think like those are the things that I think people should lean into. And then obviously relationships, interpersonal relationships. And I think we're kind of going back in time a little bit, like
absolutely.
where
Yes.
human relationships are going to become like one of the most important things that you have, because that's what's going to differentiate you from everybody else. Because when everybody can build anything they want in zero time, what's the difference between you and the next person, right? So I think things are going to kind of move in some weird ways. In some ways, we're going to go back in time, and in some ways, we're going to go forward in time.
Quite sure, yeah. All right. Marco, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. This was a very interesting conversation, I think, and I truly enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing, and good luck.
Thank you. Enjoyed it too. Appreciate it.